Hello and welcome to the fourth of our Meet the Candidates sessions. We are live on Streatham campus in the M&D room, and it is time for the Guild organised sessions for Guild Election Week for the Vice President Liberation and Equality position. My name is Rhys Wallace. I'm one of the co-heads of news here at Expression FM, our campus radio station, and joining me in the audience for our roving reporter and questions duty is my wonderful co-head of news, Laura Martinez-Williams. We have two candidates with us today. There are three candidates running for the position, however one is unable to join us at this event. And we will be asking them to come up to the stage in turn to first answer questions from myself, and then we will turn to audience questions. This will then be obviously repeated for the second candidate. We do have questions that are able to be posted on any of our social media channels. We're using the hashtag XElections22. That's hashtag EXE elections and then the number 22. Or you can comment directly underneath the Facebook post where this is being streamed out, the Instagram Live, which we have as of today's sessions, and Twitter at Exeter Guild. Now, as this is a live event with people in this room, I have been asked, as usual, to point out that there are fire escapes should there be a fire alarm. We do not expect any drills in this room at this time, so if the fire alarm does sound, it will be for real. The exits are back and to the right, back and to the left, and through the door behind the curtain to my right. So, first of all, I would like to invite our first candidate, which was decided by the drawing of straws, to the stage, and that is Emma DeSera. All good with the microphone there? Brilliant.
I think that's good, yeah.
Wonderful. It's been very short, quick succession between a couple of interviews with you today, joining us on Expression FM earlier. But let's start with a question, a very general one. What makes you the best candidate to be the Vice President, Liberation and Equality?
Sure. So hi, thank you for having me on again. Lovely to talk. So what makes me the best candidate for Vice President, Liberation and Equality is the fact that I've got extensive campaigning experience locally in my community, at university, on a national and international level. I've worked across a range of initiatives from climate justice campaigning to women's safety initiatives, as well as tackling racial inequality. So I'm really keen to use and channel all that experience and energy and dedication to this role, and that's what makes me the best candidate, the most experienced candidate for Vice President, Liberation and Equality.
Let's have a little dive into some of that experience. You mentioned some of the campaigns. What's the best lesson you've been able to draw from those campaigns?
Sure, yeah. So I've been involved, as I say, a lot of like local and global kind of campaigns. And I think the main takeaway from all of that is the fact that change doesn't happen overnight, but it happens when a lot of people, dedicated people, are driven and work together to push for change, because at the end of the day, change does happen small. It starts small, but it's part of a community-driven, powerful movement. So the key thing to take away is change happens with dedicated individuals working for what they believe in.
This Liberation and Equality campaign has started a little bit later than some of the other ones due to the nominations having to reopen. Do you feel you've had adequate time to gauge student priorities through this campaign?
I think for me personally, like that's quite an individual kind of thing, because I mean I've been working with students at the University of Exeter for like the last 3 years. So I think that all that kind of experience has kind of led me to understand what student priorities are. I think if I was coming from like a less experienced role in terms of working with societies and doing all the work I've already done, I might feel more unprepared. But I think, you know, the resources are there. I've looked into it. I think speaking to students is the best thing that I've been doing. And I haven't just been doing that for the last week. I mean, I've been doing that for the last 3 years, doing things such as being on the Women's Equality panel, being in Be the Change, doing a lot about like decolonising education. So I think that it's not just happened over this week. It's been the last 3 years have kind of led me to understand what student priorities are. So yeah, I've had enough time.
There we go. You say you've worked with different members of the guild as well, and across different societies. You mentioned Be the Change and some others as well. Have you had a chance to have a little chat with Marion, our current VP Liberation and Equality, about your plans and seeing how feasible they might be?
Yeah, totally. I mean, yeah, I've spoken to Marion quite a bit online and also just in the forum over the last couple of days. And also before I put in my nomination, we had like a chat about the role, and I kind of asked, have you felt like you've been empowered? Have you been able to make the changes you want to? And she's really reassured me that this is like a good role for me. Like, she knows about some of the experience I've had in the past, and I really hope that I can like follow in her footsteps. And I definitely think I've had a lot of experience doing activism, like a lot of stuff nationally, locally, but I really think like this role will give me kind of the ability to represent people a bit more and work on building that community-driven change. And I really think that like this role is perfect to enable me to speak to students and work on making that change.
Within the role of Vice President Liberation and Equality, there will have to be very regular listening exercises to make sure that in making change, it is not a backward step because of a lack of understanding of how it will be implemented. So what will you be doing if you become elected to keep on top of those student priorities and to make sure that those changes are meaningful and in the right direction?
Totally. And I think the most important thing to do is to just be constantly kind of available, recognizable on campus and online. So I think the main thing I'll do in order to represent students is making like my role very clear. I think throughout the election, there's a lack of kind of understanding about the different roles, and I've found that most of the students I speak to aren't actually aware of like what the role of Vice President Liberation and Equality is about. So I think that I'll be regularly, available for students to talk to, and just so that I'm constantly kind of keeping on top of student priorities, talking to students, popping into societies if I'm welcome to, and just make sure that students know why I'm here, and it's essentially to represent 30,000 amazing, diverse voices who are often underrepresented.
Within Liberation and Equality, there is a strong focus, as there is across some of the other sabbatical officer positions as well, on equality, diversity and inclusion. And within that, there are sort of 7 protected characteristics. How good of an understanding of those do you have, and what will you try and do to make sure that they are all safeguarded?
Yeah, totally. So I think obviously I'm very aware of like my position and the fact that I'm constantly like learning about the different forms of discrimination that people are facing and like other people's lived experience. And I think that's why like university is so important, because at Exeter we have got like 30,000 people all from different backgrounds, different experiences. And like personally, I've done a lot of work on terms of like women's safety, LGBTQ plus rights, mental health. So I think that I will have to obviously be constantly aware and learning and making sure I'm representing and not kind of just making decisions. So, I mean, I've been endorsed by some amazing societies such as BLM Action for Change, FemSoc, and the Roots Resistance. And they kind of do see me like as an ally to their groups. So I think in this role, it's not about obviously having to have like lived experiences from every perspective, but it's about being able to like show solidarity with other students and make sure that they know that they have just as much like power and voice as you do. And your role is basically there to like facilitate that and make sure that you can help like other students make the change they want and make them feel welcome.
Over the course of the COVID-19 pandemic, mental health, specifically around students' mental health, has come under an increased spotlight to what it certainly used to be. That is something that spans all the way across this university, from opportunities through education and all the way onto sports as well. So how will you be looking to use your platform to prioritise mental health as something that is often an unseen and untalked about area of struggle.
Yeah, totally. And I think like what you said there about it being unseen is just so important, because unlike obviously physical health, mental health is like, it's invisible, and often students can just like mask it. And I think especially in like first year, sometimes there is a tendency not to feel like you're able to speak out about it. I mean, personally, I've had a lot of experience doing advocacy about like eating disorder awareness, with BEAT, doing like fundraising, and I'm part of the national policy advising campaign about obesity strategies and how that affects people's mental health, etc. So as VP Liberation and Equality, one of the main campaign themes is about increasing awareness about it, and that means like more training for personal tutors, so that personal tutors can kind of refer students and make sure that like mental health training is very tailored, because there is a tendency just to kind of have like a blanket approach to mental health, whereas in fact like mental health affects everyone completely differently. So it's definitely an area that I feel is like one of my key priorities, but also it's really important that it's kind of integrated to all of the vice president and president roles, because obviously mental health post-pandemic, it is really worrying, and I think that students can't just kind of carry on as normal, and we need to like be aware of that and how it affects like academic work, societies, and all of that, and I think that I will be a really good advocate for that, because I am at the moment, so I don't want to kind of carry on that work.
Absolutely. It's time to turn over to our audience. We have got a few people in the room. If there are any questions from you guys.
I have a few.
There we are.
Oh, I just love the X-Media chat. So like they're really bringing through the questions. Our first one is quite an important one. It's about accessibility, but accessibility maybe to less able-bodied student. For example, Exeter is known to be very hilly, especially this campus. And there have been complaints from prospective students in the past who have been told to just not turn up to an open day because they haven't been able to accommodate them. How would you go about ensuring that accessibility is a priority?
Yeah, I mean, that's a horrible thing, people being told not to turn up. I mean, that goes completely against kind of Exeter's supposed values about inclusivity. And I think as like Vice President Liberation and Equality, it will be my role to like kind of speak to students of societies who potentially are like, the disability societies, etc., and talk directly to students and say like, what would be better? How can we do this? And then make change. I mean, I have a track record of kind of actually making change, not just talking about it. So I think like, accessibility, especially like able-bodied students, because Exeter's seen is quite like a sporty uni, which can put off a lot of students. So I think definitely there needs to be investment, like long-term investment in like more lifts, alternative routes, but also considering how we can shift to like more digital equality. And what I mean by that is that if students aren't able to show up for whatever like physical, mental health reason, that they won't be like penalised for that in their academic work. So that would involve things like removing attendance credits. And I think that that's something really important for prospective students who maybe aren't able-bodied, because, if you're getting marked for just showing up, like that is inherently unfair and unequal. So I think it's things like that, looking at like the short term, what we can do, but also long-term investment and actually pushing the uni to say like, look, if people can't get to class, like that's unfair, that's unequal. And we do need to invest in that, because I think it is a huge priority. And at the end of the day, like that's a selling point. Accessibility, it's huge and it's vital for like a uni like ours.
On the implications of what has been said by certain guest speakers, and what the implication they can have on the students and how you would help.
Yeah, so I guess that is referring to some of like the controversial speakers we've had over the last couple of weeks. I mean, I was heavily involved in the Dan Pena campaign. To cut a long story short, controversial speaker, not even controversial, just he admitted to sexually assaulting people in his audience. He had physically threatened people in the audience, and me and some friends, and it grew into a big campaign, reaching senior leadership levels, being discussed in an emergency board meetings. Unfortunately, the talk did go ahead, but we did have some prominent academics and students kind of protesting against this. So I think obviously this is a big kind of national issue about freedom of speech, etc. But I think that in that particular case, there were some procedures which weren't completely followed correctly. I did spend the whole week kind of speaking to the guild, speaking to senior leadership about it. And I think there does need to be some improved procedures about who is, permitted to speak on campus, because at the end of the day, this one individual, just to take the one case, it was hate speech, it was racist, etc. So I think there does need to be a more comprehensive view of how we handle those kind of cases and better procedures in place. So that is something in the long term I will be looking at. I don't think it's a black or white thing. It's not a binary thing of yes, no. It's right, how do we address it when it does come up again? And I think it's not the only time it's going to happen. It's happened before, and it's just about handling it from a more compassionate point of view. So yeah, that's what I think about that.
Do we have any questions on our live streams? No. Right. Well, if you do want to have any questions on our live streams, the hashtag is EXEelections22, or you can tweet directly towards @ExeterGuild or any of our social channels on there. But to turn back, Emma, you've got some more time with me asking questions to you. One of the main areas of focus for campaigns this academic year has been around gender safety, and I think most people can agree quite rightfully so. Students need to feel safe on campus, and whilst there have been some initiatives this year and around the town as well that have been aimed at improving that safety, there is still a perception amongst large numbers of the student body that there is a problem that still needs solving. How would you go about addressing this issue?
Yeah, it's one of my key campaign aims is investing in student safety, especially for women, LGBTQ+, and disabled and students of colour. And I think my experience working on the Women's Equality panel last year, where we worked to introduce the night bus, which is a really important safety initiative. So one of the first things I would do is campaign to have that more regularly. That's only running 3 or 4 days a week at the moment. And I think a really simple investment for the university to signal towards its students a bit more compassion is, right, let's run that every single day of the week. So that's a very tangible change that can be made. And I think obviously gender safety, gender-based violence, sexual harassment is such a prominent issue on all university campuses. A report by Our Streets Now in 2021 said that 84% of women identifying students had been sexually harassed in some way. So I think it is a big systemic societal issue that the university can go a lot further with. I was at the International Women's Day Festival on Saturday, and I had a good chat with Devon Rape Crisis, who have worked with the university on training schemes and about bystander training. So one of the main things that I'm going to be advocating for is having, we have the racial diversity training. We have just brought out the consent training, but it's about having more visibility of that kind of training, awareness about it, communication about the importance, because the uptake for that training is very low. And I think it's really important that we have our allyship training, that we do have active bystander training, just to kind of tackle what is a huge systemic issue. So that's something that I would definitely be advocating for.
You mentioned in that answer how you'd be communicating back to the students. Now that's something that's come under a little bit of criticism in relation to how the Guild communicates with students, with a lot of fingers being pointed towards lengthy emails that are full of quite a lot of information that sometimes leads to important facts being buried. How would you go about improving that communication strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to a lot of students about this, and it's an issue that we often kind of laugh about, like, oh, the guild, like the website, it's all so clunky, etc. But I think that's actually, it is really important, because it means if students aren't engaging because they don't know what's going on, then they won't vote, and they won't see the guild as something that is like a vehicle for change. So I think it's definitely going to be about tailoring the messages that we're sending, making the most of like the boards, etc. And I think even things like having, you know, in your first year, at the start of every year, having a 10-minute thing in your first lecture saying, this is what the guild does, this is, you know, this is signposting. You can go to them, you can start a campaign, etc. Just for some basic like pointing towards it. I think the fact it is called the Guild is something that me and a couple of the other candidates have been talking about, whereas other universities it is called a students' union. I think that is something we could potentially consult students about, because I think the Guild, it doesn't sound very new. It sounds a bit stuck in the past, and I think that is reflected in the way that things are communicated. So I think although it wouldn't be like a top priority, it would be something that in the first month of the position that we would definitely think about, and, you know, consider changing. I mean, it is quite, it would be quite a big step, but I think consulting the students, getting a vote on it, getting a referendum on changing it to a union, it could make a big difference so students really understand what it's about, especially for like a university like Exeter.
So sort of bringing the guild to the students rather than making the students go to the guild.
Yeah, absolutely. And just being empowered by it.
One final one with a short answer, if I could ask for one. If you could choose one facet of your strategy, let's say you were elected, to be a legacy that you could leave behind, what would it be?
Community-led change. I think it's Exeter, you got over 30,000 students from diverse communities and backgrounds, and I think it's about building that connection and empowering them, and that's what I would aim to leave behind.
Brilliant. Well, I think we've just about finished our time for questions with you, Emma, but if people want to know more and find out more about your campaign, where can they be directed to?
The first port of call will be speaking to me. I'm going to be continuing to be in the forum, but in substitute of that, you can follow my campaign on Instagram at Emma for VP Liberation. I'm also on Facebook and TikTok, but I will be like around and about, or some of my team will be in pink sashes, and you can go get some free glitter too in the forum.
There we go. Thank you very much for joining us, Emma.
Thank you.
Now, before I invite our next candidate up on to the stage, there is a third candidate running for the position of VP Liberation and Equality, Hannah Blackwell. They unfortunately are unable to join us for this event, and there is no statement to be read on their behalf. So without any further ado, Manav, would you like to join me on stage?
Hello.
Hello. We will jump straight into it. This has been a curtailed campaign. Obviously, it's been much more, I won't say rushed, but it's been shorter than the other 4 positions up for election. Have you been able to gauge how the students are feeling and what they want to see from their VP Liberation and Equality in that time?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm already working in the Guild part-time as college officer for the College of Life and Environmental Sciences. And so far, when I decided to run last Thursday, I only had about 4 or 3 days to just figure out what did I want to do for my campaign, what did I want to do in this position. But I already had all of the ideas in my mind, and I'm someone, if I wanted to go for this position, I am going to give it my all. So I started to plan day and night, sleepless the past 4 days. Like, I haven't slept properly because I have just been thinking, what could I do? What could I bring? What do I know from my current role as college officer? And take what I've learned already and working in the Guild part-time with the other sabbatical officers, including Marion specifically. So I do know at a way what she does so far and see how could I take on what she's done and improve the Guild.
So you mentioned there some of the experience that you've had in working, as you say, part-time with the Guild and closely with Marion, our current VP Liberation and Equality. What's the best transferable lesson you've got from that experience that will enable you to be a better VP Liberation and Equality?
I'd say communication, definitely, because given how obviously now we have been shifting back into the blended learning approach where students are working or studying on campus but also at home. And I think social media is very crucial in terms of interacting with students, and definitely using the Exeter Guild's social media pages, but also the sabbatical officers' Instagram or Facebook pages to interact with students. And it's just more about showing the students what we're doing behind the scene, because actions do speak louder than words. And if the students can see the fact that digitally everyone is doing their own things every day, and if they could even just spend 10 seconds or 30 seconds just seeing what we're doing at the Guild or for the Guild, which is why I founded the College of Life and Environmental Sciences Instagram page, and I hired marketing interns and brought a team of my subject chairs together, and we all just wanted to bring and show our college, but also the Guild and the university students what we're doing to show that we do care about you. This is why we are representing you in the first place.
So with that College of Life and Environmental Sciences position and the team that you appear to have been building in that role, have you got any good examples of sometimes you've been able to make tangible change that's been asked for by your those who you represent and then been brought up to the next level?
I think one thing I definitely did or am proud of is I created a podcast, Keeping It Classy for the college, and I have been advertising and filming episodes and promoting that on our college's Instagram page. So what I do is I proactively contact sabbatical officers, subject chairs, guild societies, presidents, and other organizations if they would like to be interviewed. And I've interviewed different people throughout the college, and it's just more about giving them a platform to show that this is my college, our college at the same time, but you can also have your voice, where the power of social media, people can post it in story and have their followers see what they're doing as well. And other than that, I also try to post events that are happening. I'm more passionate about spreading career opportunities for students, so I also work very closely with the careers department and promote a lot of the mentorship scheme opportunities and also well-being and safety. So I also do advertise, for example, safety after a night out. Don't forget to take care of yourself. I created a well-being poster for the college and also tend to advertise stuff there.
Obviously, we're electing more than just the Vice President, Liberation and Equality in this set of Guild elections. I just want to ask, what made you choose to go for this particular role? Because some of what you've mentioned in your answer there does seem to resonate with things that the Vice President opportunities might be more closely associated with. I'm
very passionate about mental health and student safety. And when I read the role, I immediately just knew that I wanted to apply. And especially because it was a reopened nomination role. And I was already proud of myself for what I'd done as college officer. So I think it was time to move on at that stage. But looking the fact that this was a reopened nomination opportunity, I just thought to myself, you know what, why not? If you were able to do it at a college level, I'm sure I can do it at a university level, and then make the changes that you could actually make by listening to the student voices and making sure that they do get what's best for them. That's actually an interesting point that's just popped up to me. If this is the role that you saw the description for and thought, yes, this is the role I want to do, you've mentioned it was a reopened nomination. That was because there weren't enough candidates to run the election. Why didn't you submit your name in the initial round of nominations? I did not submit it at first because I was thinking about it. I was thinking of applying, but I just had a lot of other stuff going on, and I just thought to myself I couldn't just commit to it. And even if I wanted to commit, just did not, at that moment, I was not at a position where I am right now to give it my all. So when I thought to myself, the reopen nomination came, I saw it as a signal. I kind of saw it as a thing where I'm going to give it my all. And that's why I'm applying for this position, because I am going to give it my all. And beforehand, I thought I wasn't going to give it my all. Absolutely. Speaking of giving it people's all, balancing different responsibilities on campus is often a struggle for many students. And you've mentioned you're passionate about mental health. What will you be doing to further the availability of resources, or if you see it as a different issue, how will you be aiming to make sure that well-being is able to keep students who may be struggling with workload or any other issues on campus fully funded and able to do their jobs to the best of their ability? So one thing I would like to do with this is to develop the personal tutoring system, which I have done as college officer so far. So I would want to work closely with VP Education and try and understand, okay, why is it that students not come to their tutors, or also what other resources are there available, which is why I decided to create the well-being poster and just put the best resources I could find online so that students could just use the resources easily by free and could just call someone anonymously. They're all confidential, or they're all just as a way you could just test it out and see if it works. Because even if you just try to, for example, call Nightline or Samaritans, for example, and it's always that difficult moment asking help for the first time. It does get easier every single time once you do it more and more, but the first initial stage by asking for help is always something that not many people can do at first, and especially I think for international students as well, it's also difficult for them because they're also not they're away from home, obviously they're away from their families, they're living in this different culture, especially in COVID-19, where they're also need to try and figure out how can they grow as a person, how can they just vibe in this socially bubble where you have opportunities last year where it was more of working from home, but now try and come back and make sure that they do feel welcomed in.
You've mentioned this well-being poster a number of times. I just wondered if you could outline to those who are watching on the live stream or in the audience what that poster was and why you're so particularly proud of it.
I'm really proud of that poster because I created it during the starting stage of the third UK lockdown, and I thought to myself, I was seeing a lot of students stress, complain, anxious about coursework deadlines, about how this is like another lockdown, and that, you know, is there ever going to be an end with COVID-19? And it's also just a matter of fact, will we ever get that social life back, especially since it's university, it's our best times of our life. And I just thought to myself, what could I do to just help people? Because I was a rep as well, and I just remembered in my course, there were just so many students that were just really upset about the whole situation. And also no one can blame them. It was COVID-19. And I just thought to myself, why not just create a massive poster, visually appealing, but also just simple resources, just about the date and time, what they offer, how would they benefit someone if they would like to assess it. And I just thought that if I could advertise all over social media, and which I did as a rep, I first promoted it around psychology, and it was really nice getting the feedback from people about it. And I then brought it up to the directors of education, and he was also very proud about it. And I used that when I applied for the college officer role. And I further developed it by building more connections across the university to advertise it, which is now seen in DH1. It's seen across buildings on campus. And the next stage would be to, if I'm elected as Vice President Liberation and Equality, would be to just promote it all over campus and potentially at a national level, but also on social media.
So it's all about sort of making sure that people are aware of the resources that are available. I'm going to turn now over to some audience questions. I wonder if we have any from our roving reporter, Laura.
Yeah, it's going to be me, isn't it? No, I've got some from the X Media chat. One of our members is asking, how will you approach groups who are you not necessarily a part of, but nonetheless need to represent?
It's really interesting because yesterday I tried to speak to some international students, and a lot of them said that, oh, we don't associate with the guild right away. And I found that really interesting. And I just tried to understand, okay, is there like this whole psychology of the sense of belonging? So what could I also do as VP Liberation to make sure that students do feel welcomed or safe? Is it by having, for example, getting in touch with societies? And because there are a bunch of societies, we have over 300 societies at the university. So then I would work closely with VP Opportunities and potentially ask them, you know, what do you think do students come for your events? Why is it that, for example, in your own experiences, have you seen friends that don't associate with themselves with the guild, and why is that the case? So one thing I would hope to do in terms of with international students, first of all, is to do like an international fair or an international day or week celebration, and that is just to get a bunch of cultural societies at the university to come along and share their food, their performances, or culture, and it just would make them feel more of the fact that they do feel belonged at the university in a way if they see other people that are around them and the fact that they can show to the whole Exeter community and the guild that this is what we are, this is what we represent, and that will hopefully build them the confidence to get more involved at the university.
Other groups.
So one thing I would do with other groups is, for the podcast I currently do at my college, I would be interested into taking that to interview diverse societies or groups at the university as well. And I would want to hear their voices as well and promote that in my platform, whether if they approve it or if they do approve it. And if it's anonymous, for example, then I would probably just transcribe it and write it in quotes qualitatively, just to make sure that they are comfortable, because at the end of the day, it's just making sure they do feel safe and comfortable with how they are represented as well. So I would do that for the other diverse groups.
And another question would be, how will you coordinate with the other guild officers to ensure that equality is achieved in all aspects?
So I go for guild officer meetings regularly as a college officer with the sabbatical officers, and we do tend to discuss a lot of different issues at the guild, whether that is current or not. And so I believe in terms of quality, in terms of developing the student experience or academic representation, we all tend to come together and we write down a bunch of ideas, and we always try to take it up in terms of the week later, see how have we improved, whether that is promoting stuff on social media, just showing the students that this is what we're doing to make sure that you do feel included, or that we are helping you out in a way, or also just to make sure that they do understand what we're doing. So that's why I think the fact that I do have the guild officer meetings every week allows me to come together, we're all together and discussing what we can do, but also then we have our guild council meetings once a month to also discuss, from getting students to come and then tell us on the spot, that we can also make those changes together.
So I think that might be it from our questions. So again, you're back with me for some more. Let's talk about, again, another issue that I raised in my questions to Emma, which is around gender safety. Now that's obviously been a major issue, which culminated on campus in terms of the Girls' Night In protest that was also made into an event by the Guild, the Girls' Gays and Days Night In. With students still reporting that they're not feeling completely safe, sometimes even on campus, let alone in the city, what do you think you could do as VP Liberation Equality to reassure them and to make them feel safe on campus?
So one thing I would do is I would want to have training for committee members on how to, I think it's really important to use societies for this, because a lot of students do go for societies or join societies. So I would want to have mandatory training on, first of all, sexual harassment, how to tackle the issue, and how to make sure students feel safe, and potentially to have committees, like a family group for committees in the different societies, so that they could, for example, walk students home if they don't feel safe to walk home, or to also collaborate with different organizations outside of campus. So for example, nightclubs, just to make sure that students do get home safe at nights out. Or we could also campaign by having students making sure that they do have, for example, like basic stuff like a portable charger, have their snap maps on, make sure that they drink water, just basic stuff to make sure that it does make a difference at the end of the day. You know, charge your phones, that you can call someone if anything. Always make sure you're with a group of people that you know, have your snap maps on so that people know where you are last, if anything.
There are, of course, other areas of equality and diversity that we need to address, and I've spent a lot of the time talking about mental health. But in terms of disability access, obviously Exeter is renowned for its hills, some would say reviled for its hills. And whilst there's nothing you can do about the geography of the city and potentially areas of the campus itself, there are some areas, such as there has been a number of worries about a lack of lift access up to some areas of campus, that you could have some sway over in the Guild. So what would you be trying to do to make sure that less able-bodied students would be able to fully engage in their life here at the university?
I would definitely want to talk to these types of students. I would want to reach out. I would want to work closely with perhaps maybe the subject chairs or the faculties, but most specifically, I would want to reach out to these specifically students who do not feel comfortable or for some reason cannot just come to campus, or in terms of struggling to get to campus because of the whole geographical barrier, and just understand. I'll ask them first of all, because I'm not very familiar with what their expectations are, because obviously I'm someone else who is just able to just walk usually, or sometimes just stay at home to work. So I don't really come to campus that much due to my work, but at the same time, I would want to ask them, why is this, how do you feel about it? Why is the case? I always like to get people's honest opinions, and then I would want to keep coming back to that person, and they could be representative for their group, and I'll be like telling them that this is what I'm going to bring up to the university, this is what I'm going to bring up to the guild. If you would like to come to one of my meetings, I would encourage that, so that I could get that person's voices heard, and maybe that person could then eventually spread out to people that are similar in that person's viewpoint.
So how would you be looking to gather those opinions? Because as I raised with Emma as well, a lot of this role is about listening and trying to find all of those diverse voices so that you are representative of the student body. How would you be looking to go about and hearing what people are saying?
So I would definitely have, for example, I would have a meet and greet, or I would have one of those like talk sessions. So I would encourage students from different backgrounds specifically to come to maybe not somewhere outdoors, but maybe at a specific room if they feel comfortable talking one-on-one, or maybe potentially booking a one-on-one meeting if they would like to discuss their viewpoints and see what can be done. What do you think has the university and guild done so far about this, and what would you hope to see, or what would be your expectations? What would you hope to see in the end? And I would then raise that with the other sabbatical officers and tell them that I really want to do this campaign, and I want to do this for these specific students because I'm representing them at the end of the day. And the fact that I am signing for VP Liberation and Equality, it is all about equality at the end of the day. So I know that I am passionate about all students' safety and making sure they do feel included. So I will definitely take that into account, and I'll make sure I do my best, and I actually will, because I work very hard.
Absolutely. I'm going to close it off with the same question that I asked Emma to finish her interview, which was, if you could have a time machine and imagine that you did win this Vice President Liberation and Equality role, and go 1 year into the future, or a little bit over a year, so you could see how the university was at the end of your year in office, what would you want your legacy of that year's work to be?
I think it would just be more to show the fact that we did try our best at the end of the day. And it's very easy for students to say that they're not doing much, or that they're not doing, they're saying they're doing stuff, but they aren't. But I would love to reassure the students the fact that we did try our best at the end of the day. This is, if we document everything on social media as a way, because people are busy with their lives, we could show them the work we've accomplished, the projects or some stuff in our manifestos that we've been able to achieve. And as long as we can convince them or show them the fact that we are, as a university or as a guild, we really do care about your experience at the end of the day, and we are a sabbatical group that is here to support you no matter what, make you feel included, make you feel that you belong at the university. I think that's all that matters. As long as students do feel that we tried, and they're like, I completely understand the fact that we tried our best, or that we know that we tried, don't worry about it. That's all that matters.
Well, that brings us to the end of our interview section. But before we let you go, where can students find out more about your campaign, if they've liked what they've heard, or if they want to just find out more about what they've heard from you?
Yeah, so you guys can check out Mana for VP Liberation on Instagram, and that is where all my campaign is. Or feel free to just get in touch with me on Facebook or Instagram, Manav Hartono. I'll be also willing to answer any questions if you wish, but most of my campaign page is on Instagram.
So there we go. That's where you can find all the information about Manav's campaign. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
This does bring to an end the fourth and penultimate session of the Meet the Candidates for the Guild election week. and things are coming to an end later on today at 6:30, where Laura will be back in the hosting chair, putting questions to the candidates for the Guild presidential role. Voting, as you can see by the number increasing behind me, is still going on and will be continuing on until Thursday the 17th of March at 4 p.m. So that is just a little over 24 hours away from now. So if you haven't voted, get out there. Maybe you can be convinced by the Vote Goat or by some Pepsi that's being given away on one of the stalls in the forum. But thank you very much to both of the candidates present today for joining us. Thank you to Laura for hosting our first session and for being my roving reporter in the second. And thank you to everyone who's been watching along on the stream at home. We will be back here at 6:30. Until then, have a very good rest of your day.